What secret did Prometheus steal from mighty Zeus? Have you ever done something brave to help someone, even if it meant getting in trouble? Tonight on Dreaming Olympus, we'll hear about Prometheus, a clever titan who cared so much about humans. He dared to break the rules of the gods. What secret did Prometheus steal from mighty Zeus? And why did his gift change the world? If you like this kind of stories, please consider subscribing and help the channel grow. Time to meet Prometheus, friend of humankind. Long ago, before the world was as we know it, there were gods who ruled the sky, the earth, the seas, and even the deep darkness. Some of these gods were called titans, old and wise, and some were Olympians, led by powerful Zeus. Prometheus was a titan with a special heart. He was clever, so clever that Zeus himself sometimes listened to his ideas. But Prometheus was different from most of the gods, where others wanted power or praise. Prometheus loved humans, tiny, new, and weak compared to the mighty gods. He watched as people stumbled through forests, shivered in the cold, and were frightened by the dark. You see, when the world was new, humans didn't have houses or farms or towns. They didn't even have fire. At night, the world was dark and full of dangers. Wild animals roamed, and the wind was cold. Humans huddled together, hungry and afraid. Prometheus watched them and felt sorry. He saw their small fires go out in storms. He saw how easily people got sick or lost. Other gods laughed at humans, calling them weak or silly. But Prometheus saw something special. Humans tried over and over to live and learn, no matter how hard it was. He decided he wanted to help. He taught people how to hunt and gather food. He showed them which plants were good and which were dangerous. Still, life was hard for humans. What they needed most was fire. Now, fire might sound simple to us. We use it to cook food, stay warm, and see in the darkness. But back then, only the gods could use fire. Fire lived high up on Mount Olympus, in the great halls of Zeus. Believed fire was too dangerous for humans. If they have fire, Zeus thought, they might become clever or strong. Then, they might stop respecting the gods. So, Zeus kept fire for himself and his family. Humans stayed cold, afraid, and in the dark. But Prometheus could not stop thinking about them. He said to himself, "It isn't right for humans to live in fear while we are warm and safe." He decided to do something very brave, even dangerous. He would bring fire to the people. Prometheus waited until most of the gods were sleeping or busy. Then, very quietly, he climbed the tall, snowy slopes of Mount Olympus. He hid in the shadows of the great halls, listening for footsteps. With a heart full of care but also nervousness, Prometheus crept to the room where the gods kept the magic fire. The golden flames burned steady and strong. Prometheus picked up a simple reed, hollow and dry, perfect for carrying a spark. He reached into the magic fire and caught a single flame inside his reed. The light glowed, small and bright. Like hope itself, Prometheus hurried down the mountain, careful not to let the flame go out. In the dark below, humans slept, dreaming of warmth and safety. Prometheus tiptoed into their camp and whispered, "Don't be afraid. I have brought you a gift." He showed them the glowing flame. Slowly, people gathered around, their eyes wide with surprise. He taught them how to build a fire, how to feed it with wood, and how to cook with it. For the first time, humans felt the warmth of fire. They cooked their food, chased away animals, and told stories by the firelight. Suddenly, the dark world was a little brighter. People laughed and danced. Their hearts were full of joy. Prometheus saw their happiness and smiled, even though he knew Zeus might find out. Up on Mount Olympus, Zeus did find out. He looked down to the earth and saw, for the first time, small, bright dots of fire shining all across the land. He was furious. "Who dares to break my law?" he thundered. His voice shook the sky. The other gods whispered to each other, guessing who might be so bold. But Zeus knew it could only be Prometheus, the titan who cared so much for humans. Now, Prometheus knew he was in trouble. But even when Zeus called him before his mighty throne, Prometheus did not hide or lie. He stood tall and said, "Yes, I gave fire to humans. I love them, and I want them to have a chance at life." Zeus's eyes burned like storms. He shouted, "For this, you will be punished." Prometheus understood, but he did not regret his choice. He had seen the happiness. Fire brought the new songs, the friendly faces, the safe homes. He knew he had done the right thing, even if it meant he would have to pay a price. But what terrible punishment would Zeus give to Prometheus? Would Prometheus ever be free again? Zeus was furious, angrier perhaps than he had ever been. With a voice like crashing thunder, he called Prometheus to answer for what he'd done. Prometheus didn't run. He didn't try to hide his actions. He stood in front of Zeus and all the gods, proud but calm. "I help the people because I care for them," he said. They were cold and afraid and needed hope, but Zeus didn't care about that. He only saw that Prometheus had gone against him. "You dared to defy me," Zeus shouted. "You gave humans a gift meant only for the gods. You will pay a price." Zeus decided on a punishment so harsh that everyone, even the other gods, stopped and stared. Afraid to say a word first, Zeus called for his mighty helpers, the strong gods of work and building. He ordered them to carry Prometheus far away, to the ends of the world. There, high in the cold mountains, stood a lonely cliff of black rock. The wind there was sharp and freezing, with no trees, no shelter, and no company at all. With heavy chains that couldn't break, they tied Prometheus to the rock. Day and night, he could not move his arms or legs. He could only look out at the emptiness and the distant earth far below. The wind howled, and the cold bit at his skin. But Zeus's punishment didn't end there. To make things even worse, each day Zeus sent a giant eagle, the biggest, fiercest bird in the whole world. The eagle would swoop out of the sky, land beside Prometheus, and begin pecking and tearing at him. It was a painful, endless torture. Prometheus cried out, but no one could help him. When night came, the eagle would fly away. Prometheus's wounds would heal, but as soon as the sun rose, the eagle would return, hungry and ready to hurt him all over again. This went on for days, then weeks, then years. Prometheus was stuck, chained and suffering, far from any friend, all because he had tried to help the humans. Back on Earth, people didn't know exactly where Prometheus had gone, but their hearts felt sad. They kept their fires burning in hope, and sometimes told stories about their friend, the brave Titan, who had changed their world. No matter how dark the night, they remembered his gift. On Mount Olympus, some gods thought Zeus's punishment was too much, but they were afraid to say anything because Zeus was so powerful. Only one goddess, gentle Thetis, felt truly sorry for Prometheus. Sometimes she would visit him in the night, winds bringing comforting whispers to ease his pain that Prometheus himself could have begged for mercy. He could have said, "I'm sorry, Zeus, I won't do it again." But he didn't. Prometheus knew in his heart that kindness sometimes comes at a price, and that brave choices are not always easy, even as he suffered. Prometheus never regretted what he'd done. He looked out at the tiny fires shining in the dark valleys far below, and knew he had helped people grow stronger and safer. He saw them sharing stories, cooking food for their children, keeping away wild animals, and staying warm through the cold nights. The people used fire to build tools and bake bread. With fire, humans learned new skills and slowly became wiser, step by step. They began to honor Prometheus, lighting special fires in his name. Around those flames, parents told their children, "Prometheus loved us. He gave up his freedom so we could live better lives." All those years, Prometheus hung on the lonely cliff, his love for people never breaking or fading away. But his suffering also made the gods think. Some began to wonder, did Zeus go too far? And shouldn't we help those who are weaker, even if it's hard? Zeus, meanwhile, still watched Earth and Olympus, keeping a close eye on the humans and the other gods. He hoped Prometheus's pain would remind everyone not to break his rules. But even Zeus could not hide a small feeling deep inside, a mix of anger, worry, and maybe even a bit of respect for Prometheus's courage. Sometimes, thunder rolled through the sky for no reason, and the gods knew Zeus was thinking about the chained titan. Sometimes, when people warmed themselves by the fire, they wondered if Prometheus would ever be forgiven or set free. But will Prometheus remain chained forever? Years passed. Every day, the huge eagle came for Prometheus. Every day, the titan's pain began again in the lonely mountains. But every night, while he watched the world from his cliff, Prometheus saw tiny orange lights burning on the ground below all the campfires he had given to humans. When the wind was right, he could even hear laughter, singing, and stories. Prometheus held on to hope. He knew his suffering had helped people become warmer, braver, and less afraid. But would he ever be rescued? Would Zeus's anger fade? Many gods had almost forgotten about Prometheus, wanting to keep the peace and not risk Zeus's temper. Even Hades in the underworld and Poseidon deep in the sea just shook their heads. A new sound drifted up the mountain, song and harp strings, and the clear footsteps of a young man. This was Heracles, son of Zeus, a new hero on a long journey full of hard tasks. Heracles was stronger than anyone and had a kind, brave heart. He'd faced monsters, wild animals, and the hardest jobs any mortal could bear. Now, as he climbed through the frozen winds, the young hero saw Prometheus chained to the rock and the eagle circling above. "Who are you?" Heracles called out. "I am Prometheus." The titan answered in a tired voice, but his eyes were still bright. "Long ago, I dared to help humans by bringing them fire. Now, I pay the price every day." Heracles looked at the chains and at the deep scars on Prometheus's body. He felt anger at the pain caused for such a good act. He remembered what it was like to be alone and to face unfair troubles. Just then, the eagle swooped in, ready to hurt Prometheus again. But now Heracles was there. Branches shook as the hero stood tall and strong, bow in hand. With one true arrow, Heracles shot the great eagle from the sky. The bird fell and would never come back again. Now Heracles stood beside Prometheus. He pulled with all his might at the heavy chains. They were strong, made by the gods, but Heracles was even stronger. The chains snapped and fell away. For the first time in years, Prometheus was freed. Prometheus blinked in the sunlight. He stretched his sore arms and legs. He thanked Heracles with all his heart. In that moment, their friendship was sealed, and Prometheus knew that even in the darkest times, hope could come from the kindness of others. But what about Zeus? Surely the king of the gods would be angry again. Heracles worried, but Prometheus shook his head. In truth, Zeus was watching from Olympus. He saw what happened on the mountain. He thought about his son, Heracles, and all the good Prometheus had done for humans. Deep inside, Zeus's anger had grown lighter over the years, watching humans use fire not just for violence, but for cooking, creating, and helping one another. He saw how the world had changed for the better because of Prometheus's gift. Finally, with a voice not quite as loud as thunder, Zeus spoke to all the gods. "Prometheus has paid for his mistake," he declared. "He tried to help humans, even when I said not to. But his courage and kindness can teach us all. Let him go, and let this be a lesson for gods and people alike. It's not only strength that matters, but the heart that chooses to help others, even when it's hard." And so, the story of Prometheus reached the world once again. He lived as a friend to humans, always known as the Titan who gave fire to the world. People remembered him in songs, in the warmth of their fires, and in the brightness of every brave act. Prometheus smiled, knowing his pain had helped bring about hope and light on earth. The gods and humans, too, remembered. Zeus became a bit wiser, and the other gods sometimes argued a bit less, thinking of Prometheus before treating others without kindness. And what about fire? It stayed with people from that day on, a gift of courage and love, never forgotten, passed down from one generation to the next. Let his story remind you that standing up for what is good and right is always worth it. even if it's scary or lonely for a while. And if you feel stuck or cold or scared, remember, hope is always waiting, and friends or heroes may be closer than you think. Sleep well tonight. Good night from Dreaming Olympus.